Welcome to this week's episode of Get a Shift On, your podcast all about career change and career transition, helping people see that it is possible to change career. This week, I was really pleased to welcome Tracey Clay from Pivotal Partnerships. Tracey has helped me along the way and started her career with British Standards, moved to recruitment, and now has her own people-centered business. It was a really great talk and a bit of a history lesson as well. I hope you enjoy it. Please do like, share, and subscribe. It helps build the podcast and help more people change careers. Enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome to Get a Shift On, your podcast all about career change and career transition. This week, I'm delighted to welcome Tracey Clay from Pivotal Partnerships, a people-focused consultancy. Tracey, thank you very much and welcome. Tracey started her life at the British Standard Institute as a traditional secretary for two managers, and I'll let her explain more about that, but now runs her own consultancy and has done for many years. And Tracey has meandered through her career. I think we just worked out in our little off-camera pre-chat, 4 careers, did you say?
Yeah, but 3.5, 4, I suppose you could. Yeah, pre recruitment is probably sort of a mixed bag, but yeah, definitely 3. So probably 4 now.
For those listening then who don't know you, explain how Tracey got to where she is today, where you started, and where you are now.
Wow, you're gonna have to go back a long time to the early 80s. I left school in 1984. Well, that's scary, isn't it? So yeah, left school in 1984 at 16 and went to college. I lived in Watford in Hertfordshire, which I lived most of my life till we relocated, and down to the West Country. I'll be honest, my dad was a train driver. My mum did bits and pieces. We were an average family. I went to comprehensive school. People like me didn't go to university really. I did really, really well at school. I got lots of O levels, GCEs at the time, and had a bit of a battle with the school because they wanted me to stay on and do A levels, but I wasn't interested. I basically wanted to buy a car and buy a house. I was a proper, dare I say, a Thatcherite child of the 80s. It's almost like, oh my God. But we were, that's what everyone was sort of on that sort of, there was this aspiration. That's what you wanted to do. Endowment policies, private pensions, houses and cars. And that was the sort of driver. So I went to college to do a bilingual secretarial course, which sounds very sort of weird at the time, but did sit there and learn to touch type ASDF, semicolon LJK, did shorthand. It was like a proper course that you did with some languages, because I told the school, well, I want a job. I'll always be able to work if I can type. So that was the sort of my reckoning at the time. So went to college, did that, started A levels at college, but again, it wasn't really for me at the time. And then I got my first job, which was at British Standards Institution in Maylands Avenue in Hemel Hempstead. And proper old school, had to do a typing test to get the job, secretary to 2 managers. It was a broom cupboard office with myself and another girl, as we were, because I would have been 17 maybe at the time, and 17 on the cusp of 18. Smoked like a trooper. We're in the office, full ashtrays. We must have been able to cut the room with a knife when anyone came in, but everybody smoked everywhere. But it was brilliant. There was like a tea trolley in the afternoon that came round. We had a facsimile department upstairs, a microfiche department. Everything was all the British Standards reports that you see, BS whatever these days. In those days they were tested, the labs were downstairs, and then all of the reports were typed up by a girl, and they were all girls, there were no men. All the technicians were men, all the women were the typists and stuff, and we had a word processing team, and they sat there and did all the reports. I typed, everything was in triplicate, but carbon copy. God, kids of today would just not have a clue the things we had the challenges that we had. But on the flip side of it, we had the tea trolley in the afternoon. We had a bar upstairs that you could go and have a drink at lunchtime, subsidised canteen. it was just proper old school, and a great grounding, sort of in my career. So I was there for a few years, and then I got a job because actually I bought my first place at 19, so I had my first mortgage at 19, and I actually got a job at British American Optical, which then became UK Optical, which was an American company, working for the technical director there, again, PA, that sort of stuff. And then from there, I moved into a role that was sort of admin-y, but actually there was a sales element, which was a company called Sea Route Ferries, which basically they had trailers to and from France, Italy, and Spain. So everything from Lalique Crystal in the West End to bog rolls in Luton across the country. So anything that had to go across the continent in trucks, that's what they did. And from there, I fell into sales because although I was there doing sort of like the sales support role, actually I wanted to be one of the sales reps. And again, very different world. We had a French owner, Andre. He was lovely, and I always remember once saying, "Oh, you haven't got any male, there's no men sales reps," and this is in the day before LinkedIn and all of that. And he said, "Yeah," he said, "because when you're on the phone, they will always want the appointment to see what you look like." I mean, that was the era that we were in. But again, loved it. It was really great. Such a diverse sort of insight into different companies and what they were transporting to and from the continent. Laughingly, I remember WordStar, which was probably the forerunner of Word, and we used to have on floppy disks. And we also had a telex machine in the office. So again, youngsters watching, look that up. So that was amazing, though, that someone was typing in France and then that was coming out the other end. So, it was a very, very different world. All the sales it was literally A to Z in the car, middle of London with an A to Z. It was just brilliant. It was a great time. But then I had children. It didn't really work with having children. So I then ended up working at a supermarket, which fitted in, which was brilliant. Wanted a job just to go in and do and come out and sort of not have to think about it. But actually it wasn't long, and they sort of sussed that I probably had a little bit more behind me than just on the cold shelves, which was where I worked in provisions. It was bloody cold, but it was good. Again, good fun. But I ended up doing all the customer service training in the branch I was in, which actually I liked. My first ever job was at Waitrose. That was my first job when I was still at college. I did work at Waitrose, but this was Asda. So I've done two at Asda. I started in Waitrose and then Asda. Anyway, cut a long story short, I had the children, did that, but actually again, once the girls got a little bit older, I actually went back to office work and started work for a company, and then was PA to two MDs. We'd set up actually two MDs, which was unusual in the business. One was full of ideas and one actually kept things on the straight and narrow. And if I tell you that the industry was putting video libraries, VHS video libraries, into the NAFI across Europe and convenience stores across the whole of the UK. Finite end to it. Basically then we moved down to the West Country, and I worked from home for the first year, which was ahead of its time. Again, really great company. The MDs were great, and gave me that opportunity. And then I started to look and got made redundant because obviously the bottom literally fell out of the video library world. And I remember looking at jobs and thinking, oh, that's okay. And then realised that was actually full-time salary, and the differential from being in the southeast to being in Devon. I thought, oh, shit, I'm going to have to go full-time. So went into an agency, local agency, and the rest is history. 20 odd years later, been in the recruitment industry ever since. So very long-winded. Certainly, I can't remember the word you used, but certainly squiggly. And as you can see, 20 odd years in the industry, and then 2019, end of 2019, decided to do it for myself. Hence Pivotal Partnerships was evolved.
I think we might have to have a bit of a history lesson as a precursor to this episode, with the talk of floppy disks, VHS, facsimiles, and smoking in an office. Never mind women only
answering sales calls.
Oh, I mean, when you think where we are, and it's not actually that long, actually, when you think historically, but that was the world. That was the world. We used to, yeah, I mean, literally, ashtrays were full to the brim on the desk, and yeah, empty it out in the bin, and then sitting there, typing away.
Yeah, I have to say, and hopefully my mother won't listen to this, but I remember coming back from school to London in a smoking carriage of a train, and that's not that long ago.
I'd like to add, I was just going to say, I would like to add, I gave up when I was, so I've been given up now over 25 years now. So.
I gave up when my daughter was born, but I remember in the Royal London Hospital where I first trained, there was a smoking room for staff and patients.
Yeah.
And
we were laughing the other day and we were talking about, I know this is a bit off subject, but when you used to go to the pictures and they'd have like the non-smoking over one side of the auditorium and smoking over the other. And so that's okay. We're in the same room, but the smokers were there. And even on planes, I remember still being on planes and the smokers went to the back. It's bizarre, isn't it?
it is another world. And actually, even restaurants, and really, really not that long ago, where you had a smoking and non-smoking section, and it was quite normal.
Yeah, bizarre. And having a bar upstairs in the company, that the bar subsidised, restaurant, which was great for lunch, but then go and have a drink at lunchtime.
Again, just
like
a very different world.
80s.
And I'm sure the price of the drinks was exceptionally reasonable.
Oh, yeah,
as I'm sure,
I can't remember.
As I'm sure also that your mortgage at 19 back in the 80s was probably a snippet of what someone at 19 might be able to pay for now.
Well, funny enough, though, the mortgage rate when we took our mortgage went up. If you remember Black Friday, just before the crash, I remember. So we bought in 1987, and then we were looking to move around. So that would have been that would have been about 88, 89 maybe. But our mortgage went up to 15%. 15%. So although, and I mean, sort of monetary, I think our first mortgage was 41,250. So that's how much we had to borrow to buy our first place. I think the purchase price was 51,250 and our mortgage was 48,000. But again, so different. They would only take 1 times my wage and 3 times my husband's, and we were about 500 quid short, and we had to go to our companies and get them to write to say that we were getting an increase that April, so that actually we made up that extra 500 quid that we could get. We had a deposit to put, and there's a little deposit, but we decided to buy that when we were in the pub on a Sunday afternoon. I mean, it's bizarre when you think back. My husband, he's my husband now, he wasn't at the time. And then I remember I watched him play football on a Sunday, because I was that sort of girlfriend that went and watched him every Sunday. Why would you do that? But and I think it was because we always went to the pub afterwards, and we were just in there and we went, I think we ought to buy something. And we went and looked that afternoon, and pretty much that was it. Very different times. But comparison, it was a big chunk of our salaries. I think I was earning about 17 grand a year at the time, something like that. No, it probably wouldn't even. No, it must have been about 14, 15 grand, something like that a year.
All the best decisions are made in a pub on a Sunday afternoon. In fact, any afternoon. Yeah. Well, you've made it, and you've made it this far. So, something, despite the smoking, the drinking, Sunday decisions.
And I'm still with it. 35 years this week.
And congratulations, I did see that. That's fantastic. It sounds like you had a lot of fun through all of that. And I guess you haven't been miserable in the careers you've done. It's just that things change. And obviously having children, to me, that's kind of the pivotal bit that really seems to change everything.
Yeah, definitely. And again, when you think back in time, there wasn't the flexibility. The part-time roles, I went to work at, sort of a supermarket, because that was the part-time sort of options, really. I was lucky with the role for In-Store Movies, which was the one with the naffy and the videos, because actually that was fairly part-time. It was okay. I could pick up the kids, friends and I, and this was the day, I literally threw the kids in the morning at school. So it was always the first ones in, last ones to pick them up. And thankfully I had a good support network of like people that we were all doing that. So we shared it, but it wasn't sort of flexible like it was now. And certainly wasn't part-time as I would consider it. So that was a big thing. And the sales role that I had clearly would never have worked, sort of not doing that full time. There was none of this working, not even the remote working from home, but just that tradition. It was very much that it was all or nothing sort of thing. So I knew it wouldn't work, which I think very thankfully we've come a long way now and can see it's actually about outcomes. It's not the fact that you're sat at your desk or out and about, doing, just because you're present, it doesn't mean that you're, achieving the outcomes that should be.
It's funny, isn't it? Because you talked about those roles and the differences from now, but very much you were a traditional 9 to 5. Go to college, okay, no kind of education beyond that. Get your house, get your car, have your children. 9 to 5, pension, job done, sorted. Obviously, you've come a long way from that, but there are lots of people who haven't. And again, it's really not that far ago. And I talked about it this week on a piece that I did, because I think our children will have such a different outcome and such a different outlook on life and that traditional 9 to 5. I do think it will eventually vanish. And you must have seen that as you moved into recruitment and how things have changed over the last kind of 20 years.
Massively. I can't think of the author off the top of my head. The 100-Year Life. That's a really great book to read, because that traditional education, work, and then retirement, that model, for one of a better word, is changing beyond belief. It's a school now, but the thoughts of having long-term one employer jobs for life. So my dad was a railway driver for 40 years. So, it was like he went in. There were so many businesses around us. Oddham's, I'm thinking of, even Kodak, all of those big things. Guys and girls went in, started young, stayed there till they retired, took their retirement, and then enjoyed retirement. But that now, I don't think we see that. We definitely don't see that, and it's quite interesting. So you say about recruitment, so when I first went into recruitment, what we were looking for is good, steady, no job hopping. It's like you started, yes, you'd want to see a career trajectory, dependent what the role was, but you don't want to see any gaps. You don't want to see them hopping around here, there, and everywhere. But actually the reality is nowadays that's probably the norm. I mean, COVID and all that happened around that time aside, the project-based, sort of collaborative working, just the way that work works now, we're seeing more and more that people are actually working in different ways. And the career thing, absolutely. I mean, I'm 57 now. I can't see myself retiring anytime soon, and I don't want to. I love what I do. But it's very different now. All the different elements that I do that well, you can tell from my career, I never thought I'd be doing now what I'm doing now. Way back in 1987, when I was, striving to whatever it was that I was striving at. So I think, there's much more opportunity, but it can still be scary, because I think we're still the new generations that are coming through, absolutely nothing scares them, and I love that. And I think they're just embracing it, and we have to embrace how they are and the world that they've been born into, that we created. So we've talked about that transition. It's our generation that has gone from that, sort of word star on the floppy disks to God, AI and automation and all of that. But we've created that world, and we've brought these children into that world. So we have to have a responsibility to that. Go, well, we've created it. We can't expect them to work in the same ways that we did. So, that's a whole other episode, I'm sure. But I just think it can be fearful, But at the same time, there's lots of opportunity out there to take your life and career into whatever direction that you want to, really, and can do.
And I think we're so lucky that we live in a world and a time where we have that opportunity and we can do it and we have that flexibility. I think that flexibility in careers, in that recruitment space, is making people feel happier and allowing them more freedom. Is it causing problems? Because I think there's an argument to say that when you have a rigid way of working in anything, actually that's quite good. It's a bit like, I guess, going to a restaurant and you have a one-page menu or 30 pages of menu, and the 30 page is always very confusing because you never know what you'll be. You always go back to the standard. And I see that as very similar here. The flexibility is great because it gives people the choice. It allows me to work with my clients who want to do something different, and likewise yours. But actually, does it cause more problems than good?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it doesn't suit everybody, and I think that's the key thing. One size doesn't fit all, and I think so. When I've seen it, like you say, some people really see, just they want to see their pathway, and that's really important. So any organisation that is trying to engage people, they need to show where these people might want to go within their organisation. I think career pathways are key, because one of the biggest things that people want to do is develop themselves. Now, how they develop themselves and what direction they develop themselves is a very personal and unique thing. But unless organisations are giving them that opportunity to do it within their organisation, they potentially could. That's why people then look outside, and things change. So when I look back at my careers, but my life, my priorities now are very different to what they were when I was 17, 18, 19, and at each stage of my life, my priorities have changed for different reasons, having children, whatever it is. And now it's grandchildren. So like today, working for myself, it's great for me because I went, right, well, I've worked my own diary. I can take some time out, be with the grandchildren all day, but then I'll do some work later on. So that works for me. But other people, that can be a really scary place if they're used to that, particularly in big organizations where they've started and been a long time. They might not actually be enjoying what they're doing, but actually they perhaps really enjoy working in the environment that they do. And actually, if there was an opportunity for them to do something different in that organization, the organisation might retain them, but also once you start sort of thinking about what is it I want to do, sometimes that will take you out of that and then take you into that other world. But that's quite a scary place. Sometimes there needs to be impetus from whatever direction. That could be working with a coach to open up some of those thoughts. It could be situations like redundancy, or situations that are actually out of our control, but then actually how can we use this thing that's happening to us to actually then take it in a direction that I have got control over. And actually, this is something that's made me think I could do this. So, but it can be a really scary place to actually intentionally leave the safety nets and then go into something different.
I think
I
sometimes
don't know if
people,
that answers your question.
it does. No, it absolutely does. And I think some people need that structure. They need that security. And like you just said, and I've seen it with some of my clients, just a conversation around what they're doing, where they're going, that career progression is sometimes enough just for them to turn around and go, actually, I don't hate my job as much as I thought I did. I just need to look at the way I'm doing it or speak to the team and see how we can do things differently. And I guess there will always be those people who want to stay in a structured
Yeah.
environment. And then others, and I can also put my hand up to this, who are a little bit flighty and want to do something else. And it's great, I think, that there are companies supporting and understanding that that is now a possibility. And I think for me, that's the exciting bit moving forward. And as far as recruitment and the work you do, I think that's where it really, really helps people to be able to do that and move forward.
Yeah, definitely. And I think sort of thinking how Pivotal's sort of developed as well. all of those elements really come into play, and often one of the first things that I talk to when I engage with a client, and they go, oh, we want to recruit so and so, whatever it is. And I go, all right, oh, that's great. However, let's talk about what's happening in the business. So what are the plans for the future? Who have you got currently? What's the progression for these individuals? Have you spoken to anyone in the business about this potential role that you're recruiting for? And I can't tell you the numbers of times that they go, no. And you think, but a lot, that can be a real great catalyst within an organization, because so there's several scenarios. The first scenario is that they don't talk to anyone that's existed in the business. They recruit externally, bring someone else in that's going to be on a high salary, because we know that when you actually recruit in, then it's unlikely that it's going to be within the salary confines, unless you've got a very, very structured environment, and it's still going to be tough to bring someone in. And people talk, so there's no point going, oh, don't tell them what the salary is. One of my biggest bugbears is that we don't put salaries on adverts, because it'll upset everyone in the business. We'll sort out the business before you start recruiting in. But anyway, that aside. So you've got these individuals that potentially love the company. They've been doing what they've been doing for a while, or, they may not have done, but realise that that's not what they want to do. There's other opportunities that with a bit of development, a bit of opening up, they could potentially be great at. So they're not getting that opportunity. They then bring somebody else in, so that hacks them off. They're actually quite good at what they do anyway. So every recruiter under the sun will be like hammering down their door for another client. So they're going to exit because they're hacked off, because actually they weren't considered for the role. So you've got this whole mismatch of what's going on. Whereas actually, if you looked at who you've got, what potential you had, even with a bit of investment, and then actually it might be that you still need to recruit, but it might be for something different, or it might be. But so many companies just go, oh, we're going to recruit like for like and bring that in. So I think those forward-thinking companies that actually have got a really open sort of culture of looking at that, and that's what I like to sort of encourage when I speak to anyone that I'm involved with.
I think it's really short-sighted of companies to not look at that pool that they already have. And it's no wonder then that people get annoyed and want to move on.
Yeah. And it might be, I mean, I remember having a conversation a few years back, and they'd really struggled to recruit a role in to replace somebody that was retiring. And I said, well, have you got anybody it was only a small business, anyone that you think might be interested? And they assumed and presumed. They went, oh, no. I said, have you spoken to anyone? They went, no, you would want that role. And I went, but have you asked the question? And they said, no. And they actually did. Actually, not making it up, genuinely, the person that was in a slightly different role said, I'd love the opportunity. So they invested in a bit of training, brought them up to speed. They've retained all of that company knowledge. And this was quite a fairly long-standing person that was in the business. But what could have happened, they weren't asked. Again, they brought somebody else in. They're now hacked off, and then just think, oh, do you know what? They're not valuing me. I'm going to go somewhere else. Yeah, exactly that.
And you hear it time and time again. What was it that was the final push for you to start your own business?
So I think there was a couple of things that came into play. So the first thing was I hit 50. So I think that, most people that hit 50, I don't know if it's a midlife crisis. I wouldn't say midlife, because we're probably a bit further on. But I think it was, people had said to me historically, oh, you should do it for yourself. And again, going back to your original question, I quite liked being in an organisation. I liked being part of something. That's probably why I do what I do now, because the bit that I'm really interested in is the DNA of the company. So I really enjoy being in that environment. But I hit 50, and I think it was sort of almost now or never. Interestingly, I did a company I was with invested in us in mental health training. So I became a mental health first aider, which was amazing from the perspective of looking out for my colleagues and sort of people that I was working with. But it fundamentally made me look at myself, and I had a national role at the time, and sometimes I'd be all over the country, and I'd ring home. We had a couple. We didn't have 4 grandchildren at the time. We had a couple, and I'd ring home, and my husband would say, the girls came around with the kids today, and I'd go, oh, and I did actually start to feel this sort of almost jealousy that I'm off in some hotel somewhere and they're like having fun. So that was a big motivator. So how can I sort of manage this and enjoy this part of my life? We were quite young grandparents. We became quite grandparents quite young. And I think the other thing was that there were changes in the organisation that were not bad. They were just changes. So change of, sort of changes of the guard, for want of a better word. And I just felt my time had come to the end of that. It was seven and a bit years that I've been with them. So it wasn't I've got to get out. But actually I started to reach out, and to be fair, started looking at roles, and then thought, and I have to watch my potty mouth, but sort of same crap, different colours on the wall. So it was going to be much of the same thing, but just for another company. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do that, why don't I do it for myself? This is great. So so that was sort of what motivated it. Interesting times, because it was end of November 2019. So I made the decision, incorporated on the 19th of November. Didn't actually do much because it was nearly Christmas and I was enjoying a bit of free time. My eldest daughter was getting married on the 1st of February 2020. So that was a bit of a, thank God, 2 years in the planning. So it was, I didn't really do much before the wedding because it was nice to do all the wedding stuff. And I thought, I need to get my act, sort of into, I've got to get myself into gear. So I started work, made my first placement on the Friday, the 19th of March. So I don't know if you remember that day, but that was the weekend the world fell off a cliff. And I thought, oh gosh, what am I going to do? I was limited company, slid through the net, so no furlough, rinsed my savings over, a period of time. But actually, when I look back at COVID, it allowed me to develop other areas of the business. So it was, when I started, it was Pivotal Recruit. That's what I called the company. So it was purely recruitment. But actually what it did was give me time to develop the other areas that I loved, which was the coaching side of it, the strategy side of it, all of the other elements. But it's taken me probably till this year to really define the business of what I want it to look like. It was a bit of a journey, really. But I think that those impetuses, it was now or never. It was fundamentally, I want to do something for me and give me the freedom that even with, flexible working now, it wasn't going to give me that real freedom. And I don't know. It was just, now or never, really. Let's just go for it. So, but again, because I think the stage of life that I'm at, it was not less of a risk, because it was a bloody risk, and it was, but I did have, and I think finances is always a big thing, and I did have a chunk of money behind me. Sadly, lost parents and had a bit of inheritance that was sitting behind me. So again, I think it just gave me that confidence that, okay, I can give this a go, because I've got a bit of a stopgap. So there's a number of things, but I think being at the latter stage of, not latter because I've got a long way to go yet, but not at the beginning of my career, not in the middle, when sort of I probably would never have done it if when the girls were small, that I wouldn't have been in that headspace to be that fear. But actually, God, I wish I had, because if I had have done, I would have had a completely different life. So, but if buts and maybes, you can't, you just have to roll with the punches, really.
I think it's interesting to look at when it starts for people, that thought of doing something different. As you say, when the girls were young, if you had, if but maybes, but you would have had a very different outcome, a very different life. And I think sometimes it takes until 50, 45, 40 to actually understand who you are. And you touched on it, and you said it kind of took you some self-reflection to understand how best to move forward. And I think that is absolutely huge. And I don't think we get that until you are a little bit more mature, older. I'm not sure quite what the right word is because mentally I'm pretty sure I'm still 18, but it certainly has taken me a long time, post children, post divorce, to look back and say, do you know what? All the reasons that I wasn't settled, I now understand because I understand me better. And then I think you are more free to move forward. Yes, having a bit of financial backing obviously helps, but there's ways around that if there isn't huge amounts.
Yeah. And I think it depends what direction you want to go in. You didn't have to have any finances. A lot of it was extra, I suppose I was confident because I knew I could do the job. I could do the day job. So that was always going to be the bread and butter. So that wasn't the fear of it. But I think it's quite a vulnerable space to put yourself in, because I think when you're in the confines of an organization, particularly, sort of big organizations and sort of public sector, big, shiny brands, things like that, to take yourself out of that and go, this is me. I mean, I remember having real angst over my bloody website for months, because it was almost like giving birth to a child, because you're putting yourself out there. The reality is, I'll put it out there eventually, and I probably haven't done enough on it, and I know I haven't, because I'm looking at doing a sort of rejig of it at the moment, because it doesn't represent the business now as it is. But I just remember it was because, God, this is me. And there's almost like this maybe it's because we're British, I don't know, but it's almost like you can't show off. You can't, that arrogance of who am I? And we talk about imposter syndrome. I like to use the word phenomenon, even though I can't say it. And then I always want to do the Muppets, sort of in the background. But actually, it does exist in all of us, because suddenly we're out there saying, this is me, and this is I'm able to do this. Who am I? Having these conversations. But the reality is, if you listen to the feedback, you listen to the evidence around you, people trust you for what you're doing, and the results speak for themselves, and you have to listen to that. But it's quite a vulnerable place to put yourself when it's just you, particularly solo businesses, I think, as well, because you haven't really got anyone to sort of like go, oh, should we do that? It's all down to me. Yeah, it's quite a vulnerable place to put yourself. So which is another, sort of, to get that impetus to do it but it's really freeing and empowering, and all of the, moments of, oh my God, what am I doing, are totally outweighed with, I can do what I like, within reason. It's that is, yeah, it's definitely worth it.
It's really vulnerable and really lonely, especially on your own,
Massively lonely,
because you don't have that support system. And if you come from that corporate structure where someone does everything for you, to suddenly have to, and I've talked about it lots on previous episodes and on other content as well, you're used to working with someone where you chuck receipts and suddenly your expenses are there and you get paid. Job done. Easy peasy. Marketing.
Oh God, and IT, pain of my life. We used to moan about the IT departments all the time. God love you all out there, the IT departments, because we don't value you. Sort of, sometimes turn it off and turn it on again doesn't wash. You just think, oh my God, what am I doing?
And who do you go to? Where do you turn to? And it is really, but again, I think it takes a bit of maturity and self-understanding to realize that actually it is okay, and that imposter phenomenon, which I certainly can't spell. Thank you. Shall I say it again?
Again, it's a reference that most of the kids of today won't get.
But it takes that, I think, it also gives you the power to say, I believe in myself and I can do it, and I can move forward.
Yeah. And I think you've got to surround yourself with, I don't like the word tribes and that because it's so overused and stuff, but I think you have to surround yourself with networks of your people that really get you, and that's where I've been really lucky. I mean, you know me, David, I go to the opening of an envelope. I love networking, I love being in the room, but that's because I get energy and support from the various groups that I'm in, and whether that's local, whether it's industry specific. So I'm, you know, the Southwest Director for Team Network, which is a national network of independent recruiters. And it is like we always say, you know, it's great, it's collaboration, there's lots of reasons to be in it, but it is like recruitment therapy. So no one quite knows our industry like other recruiters. And when the highs are high, they're great, but it can be a really sort of up and down journey. So to have a network of like-minded people from that perspective is fantastic, and actually got me through COVID. If I hadn't been part of that, I think I'd have just given up the ghost during COVID. So definitely I've got some really close friends from that, but actually a really supportive network. But the local chambers, the local networking events that I'm part and parcel of, again, really important, because when you are a solo, you can reach out to these people, but with all of that, there's still, it's just you as a solo, and there are moments when you do feel lonely. So it's really important to have that support network, but also the understanding that actually it can be a lonely place, and that's probably one of the things you don't think about.
I just want to touch on tribes, which I completely appreciate the word, and I think it is overused. There's several. Try not to use too many of those corporate type words, because I think it is unrelated. But you're so right that it is important to find those like-minded people wherever you find them. And I think the other thing that comes with that maturity and going out on your own is that you realize that you can pick who you choose to network with. When you're stuck in a company, you're very much stuck with your colleagues, with the people that you go out with, because there isn't really anyone else. So yes, it can be very lonely on your own, but you are in control. So if you don't want to go to a networking event, or you don't want to speak to someone, or you want to kind of have a bit of a declutter, it's perfectly acceptable
totally
to do
agree.
that.
And yeah, it's I think actually it's not just about your support networks. I think that goes for your whole business. So it's like you don't have, you know, there's no one dictating who I have to work with or how I work, or, you know, so I do, people say, or, you know, who do you work with? Basically people I like. So I'll work with people that I like, and if I don't, or they don't, we'll use another corporate. If they don't align with my values, then I won't work with them. So that I've got the power to do that. So yeah, totally.
And it's that empowerment, that freedom to have that choice, be it who you work with,
Yeah,
when you work, to be able to switch off and say, like you said, you had the grandkids this morning, you know, it's half term for me, I've got my kids, you know, I would do what I want to do when I do it, and if I want to do it. And that also comes to picking clients as well, where people say, well, you're a bit expensive, or, you know, and we see that throughout life, you know, with trades, you know, someone says, oh, is it really that much
yeah,
to fix my
it is.
fence? Well, yes, it is. But it takes a certain amount of time to be able to go, yeah. And actually, I saw something this morning, a really funny video, and I can't remember who it was, Alex Hormozy maybe. And he said, what has always worked well for him is if someone says, can you do it cheaper? And he'll answer, yeah, but I can do it more as well. And that usually settles the argument. And I think having that freedom, what is it? What is the best thing for you about having your own business?
What is the best thing for me? I think so. My business for me is that variety and control. So I am a control freak. So, you know, admittedly, you know, I would say it. But actually it is having that autonomy and control over every element of it. And that is really empowering. I think the freedom aspect of it is great for me. Exactly as you said. I've got the choice to work when I work. So I'm on a bit of a fitness campaign at the moment. I have a brilliant PT. She's great. This is week 4. God, if you'd have seen me halfway through the PT session, the first session, I thought I'm going to die. My body is just going into shock. This is ridiculous. But actually, I'm really enjoying it now. But the reason I'm saying about that is because I can choose when to do that. It's taken me a long time, even as my own company, to be able to make the decisions that I can go and do my PT session when I want to. I spoke to a friend, actually. She's got her own business as well. We both had that conversation. We both came up through, well, I've had it with several people actually from our industry. We all came up through the first in, last out. You absolutely were determined on, sort of that how much you were putting in, not necessarily, what was coming out the other end. And it's taken us all a long time to give ourselves permission that actually it's okay. And so coming back to that, that's the freedom of actually, who should I have a conversation with to decide what to do? So the reason I mentioned about the PT as well was, before I was doing the PT, I'd get to about 2:30, 3 o'clock. I'd go, oh God, I need a nap. I was like knackered. And then actually I thought, well, I might have a nap. So I'll go and have a nap. And that's okay because I'm the boss. So I might go have a bit of lunch, watch a bit of telly, chill out. I might have a nap, a nanny nap, as people don't know. But actually I knew it was fine because I often get into my flow about 7, 8 o'clock at night. So hubby will be watching football, snooker, golf, you name it. If it's got a ball in it, he'll be watching it. And actually, that's fine because I can sit there and do some work. And that's my choice, to do that. So it gives you that autonomy to be able to do that. So thankfully now with the PT session, I don't feel that need to nap in the afternoon. Yeah, just straight out of the gym. That's when I need to nap.
That's a good advert.
She's
for
brilliant.
a PT.
And the reason I chose a PT was because I knew that I needed somewhere. We were laughing this morning, actually. I had a session this morning and I did the plank. Now, there'll be people out there that can hold the plank for hours probably. But when I think about 4 weeks ago, I did the plank. I think I got to like 20 seconds and I was like, it was just, I was going. And this morning I did a minute. I held it for a minute, but we got to the last 10 seconds and she was actually quite aggressive with me and said, you can do this. You can do this. Hold on. And I did because that's what I needed. I needed that. So in a roundabout way, it's that going back to your original conversation about tribes and people, I've got people I've got my PT that will do that in the PT session, but I've also got a really close-knit lot that will go, just sort yourself out, come on, you can do this, so I've got a really good support system in place for those moments, because there are those moments you think, well, I can't do this anymore, I don't want to do that. There are the downsides and the dips, and particularly those in the recruitment industry will know the last couple of years have been really tough in certain sectors. So we all have moments we think, God, I can't do this anymore. But I've got a great network of people that I can reach out to and go, I'm thinking of this, and they go, absolutely not, come on, so again, corporate cheerleaders, that's another buzzword, isn't it, that we like to, but genuinely they are. And also people that give me impetus to do things. So a shout out to Charlotte Sykes, actually, who again is she's got her own business, coaching and training business up in Northampton, and we are both certified coaches, and we've been talking about doing this accreditation with the Association for Coaching for ages. We've been talking about it for ages. She then said to me the other week, she said, right, they're doing a live assessment program. We can do all of this. A lot of it is live. We're doing it. She said, let's just book it now. And she made me book it while we were on Zoom. But if I hadn't, I wouldn't have done it, because I kept going, oh yeah, I haven't got time to pull everything together. But actually we did it. We pulled everything together, all the evidence. We submitted our applications. We did the live assessment. There were some really deep ethical conversations as well. So it was really quite intense. This was last week. I don't know if you saw my post with I gave myself a treat, cherry ice cream and Dawlish Warren Beach. It was brilliant. But we did it. But if it hadn't have been for her, I wouldn't have done it. So having people like that in your world, and I've mentioned her, but I've got a really great support of sort of network of a number of those.
It's amazing when you have that accountability, how much difference it can make. One thing I struggle to try and articulate and explain is the feeling that I'm sure that you and I have now, because we can look back at our past selves and know that it's all going to be okay. I really struggle to articulate to clients who are stuck that it's all going to be okay in the end. How would you help me articulate that to someone that's listening who's stuck, who's worried, and just to say, do you know what? It's okay. And when you get to this point, it's not easy. It's not necessarily quick, but you'll get to that point and you'll look back and not want to go back. I presume that's the situation that
and
you are
I'm
in
unemployable now, without a doubt. So there's
that makes
without
two
a
of
doubt.
us.
So I think, taking a leaf out of the coaching, sort of manual, you have to take people forward to what it could be like, but take them there. What's happening? What's going on around there? What's going to make, what difference is this going to make to your life? If you achieve all this and you absolutely, everything that you do enables you to get what you really want, and you're there. So if you can get them to visualize what that looks like for them individually, because again, when you look back, where you are now to where you look back is very different probably to, my thoughts about where I'm here. We've probably got similar feelings, but actually what makes my life better from me being here doing what I'm doing now. So to take them there, and then what have they done to get there? And actually by taking some of those little sort of challenges or barriers or whatever, and taking each one and going, but what if, what could that mean? So I think that's a way to sort of get people to think about it, because you see immediately if that's what they really want to do. You can just you feel it. It's I'm an emotional person, but if you can take them to a point and get them to articulate to themselves what it means and what it feels like if they got there, then I think that's a good thing. But I just, for me personally, looking back and thinking how I feel about it now, I know it sounds weird, but I just feel I've just got a big smile on my face, because it just feels right. It feels that I'm in the right place, doing the right stuff. All the scary stuff. There are scary days. There's times that you doubt yourself. There's times that you think, God, I don't know when the next invoice is coming in, or, that piece of work has been delayed or whatever. And you do think, oh, God, and those are worrying times. But there's always something that happens. And I'm an internal optimist. So I think that's the thing I would just sort of try and get them to understand, is that when you get there and you get the benefits of it, it's worth all the other crap, but it's hard. It is really hard to articulate because it's such a personal thing, isn't it?
Yeah, really, I find it very difficult. I know it's the right thing, and you're right, when people have that ambition and you can see it, and I think certainly for the people that I work with, there is a point that they reach where there is no going back. They
Yeah.
just need that help with that push forward. And you mentioned being a control freak earlier, which is quite interesting, because I think there's probably an element of that in a lot of those people. I see it in myself, where that is absolutely, part of the reason I'm unemployable is because I am a control freak, and more so now than I probably ever have been in many ways, although freer to think about lots of other bits.
Yeah.
But
I think we have to reframe the sort of control free. It's being in control of our own destiny, isn't it? And I think that that's both empowering, slightly scary sometimes, because buck stops here sort of thing. But then put yourself in a corporate position, for instance, and if you're a senior manager, the buck stops there as well, and you've still got all of that accountability. You've got all of the sort of weight of whatever it is that you're doing. The great thing for doing it for yourself is you can go, do you know what? Yeah, okay, today's rubbish, but I'm going to go off down the beach. I'm going to refresh, think about what I can do, who else can help me, reach out. But actually the accountability is me. You haven't got the weight of all those others on your shoulders as well. So, and what's the worst that can happen? The sun will still come up the next morning. Life goes on. Yes, there's challenges, but there's always a way around it. And I think if you're the sort of person that will always look for the opportunity and are not sort of you're not overly risk averse, but not. I like to think that I take controlled risks. So I'm not completely like, oh yeah, I'll just do it. Sometimes I do, but there's always an element of, okay, yeah, I can do that. I'll risk that because actually, what's the worst that can happen? And I think you've got to have a little bit of that. It's the old Nike tick, isn't it? Just do it, sort of, and see what happens. You never know; it might be the making of your life.
And I think that is an absolute perfect place to end. Is there anything else we should have discussed that we haven't done?
I don't think so. I just haven't stopped talking.
That's great. I love it. It's much better that way. It makes my life much easier. Tracey, thank you so much. Thank you for your insight. It's been a very interesting conversation. You've had a great career, and I love some of the historical references. I might have to put up a few pictures of what a VHS looks like, what a floppy disk looks like, and a room full of smoke. But
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Great.
I really, really appreciate it, and thank you for all your support for me as well. And you have been there, and I look forward to speaking again soon. Thank you.